Good morning, world. This is Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition, and I greet you live from North Carolina in Morrisville. And North Carolina is the largest state in the United States of America. Today, I open up with the elephant in the room, the story of the day, that we are actually there, a rematch between President Joe Biden and former President Donald J. Trump, who is well on his way, only about 200 delegates away from winning the nomination of his party, the Republican Party, with Nikki Haley dropping out of the race effective this morning in Charleston, South Carolina. She's announcing that she will be skipping or suspending her presidential campaign. In North Carolina, the effects have been quite amazing. Josh Stein headed off to run against Mark Robinson, and some real upsets with MAGA Republicans winning and ousting incumbents like Kathy Truitt, the state superintendent of public instruction, who's running against one of the most right-wing conservative MAGA moms, Michelle Morrow, who ran for Wake County School Board here where we live, Kimberly Calhoun and I live, Nick Paladiva, and lost a seat there and ended up winning now to be the nominee for the Republican Party for the state superintendent. All across the board, I think the thing to say is that as I bring in the show with Mark Lee, I did want to say that I think that we all have to be prepared for a Trump presidency again. I do believe, based on the numbers and math, and I've been looking at the electoral map, that Joe Biden in 2020 won with 303 electoral votes. The swing, Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada, and those states were very close for Biden, but he was able to pull it off. Right now, he's trailing in those states. All he would need is two of those states to cross over to get Donald Trump to 306 votes. I'm not saying that Biden could not come back and win. He's still got 8 months, but clearly the incumbent president is in trouble. I think all of us have to be prepared of Donald Trump being back in the White House again. What would that mean for America? What would it mean? I think it would mean an isolationist foreign policy. I think you would see continued efforts to bring manufacturing jobs back. So that would be a good thing to continue the trend we're seeing with Joe Biden. And he says he wants a reunified Republican Party. I can only hope that he'd want a unified nation as well. And that in his second term as a presidency, he would realize that in 3 years, he's going to be done. So could he actually pull some things off like immigration reform, border security control, doing those kinds of things, rather than reneging everything that Joe Biden did? But I think it's fair to say that if the election were held today, Donald Trump would be the president. So if you're a Democrat listening to this, I think it's something that you need to realize and you need to shift your strategies. Don't know how this is going to affect North Carolina. I still think Josh Stein will prevail, but it's a real eye-opener for everyone. But get your popcorn out. It's going to be a rematch. It's like Rocky 2, except now you got two old guys going at it for the Oval. Let's get started.
We've got different people that'll be joining us, and like I said, there are some that might be excited about what you're saying. Some that
I'm
might
here for
not
about
be
30 minutes. Here, but there were so many races that well, Mike Woodard lost. I think he lost.
He did lose to Sophie Chidlick, who will now be going up against a libertarian candidate, but she will probably win that seat. So yeah, Mike is no longer going to be in that state Senate seat that he held for a number of years. So another career politician has gone down, and apparently she was a transplant. So Rick Rosner, I'm getting ready to bring on, will be glad to know, because Sophia Chidlick actually moved here from California. I think she moved here about I want to say it was maybe 10 years ago or something like that, but she was a mom that is now running here in this area and will be representing this area after she had left the West Coast to come this particular direction and everything. And Nick and Rick, really quickly, I'm still trying to figure out, because apparently the first defeat for Mr. Biden took place in American Samoa. So if somebody can please tell me who the heck is Jason, I think his name is Palmer or something like that, because he won that seat. And the first one.
Time on it because it's based on 91 voters in American Samoa, 51 of whom voted for this guy. Nobody knows who he is. I want to talk about polls, though, because Steve mentioned that Biden is trailing Trump in polls, except that in the 16 states that have held election events for Trump versus so far, the polls have been wrong, often really wrong, in 14 out of 16 states. They've overestimated how well Trump will do. The polls are increasingly crappy. The only two states where the polls accurately predicted how well Trump would do are Alabama and your state, North Carolina. But
Hey, Rick, just really quick along those same lines, and Steve kind of alluded to it, and I did before we started the show and everything. What will some of the big money dollars do, not just in the national election, but even in state elections? Because as I mentioned, I hear that Mr. Trump, former President Trump, will be meeting with Elon Musk, who is not a big fan of Mr. Biden. So that could be some major money coming into the Republican coffers if he's able to get that money.
It's not just money from Elon Musk. Elon Musk owns Twitter, and that there's a ton of propaganda flying around every day on Twitter, and I expect it will just go crazy the closer we get to the election. I've been followed in the past 3 weeks by a bunch of AI accounts, just like fake people, and right now they're benign. They repeat what you say. They like your stuff. I'm guessing that as we get like a month away from the election, all these benign accounts will shift to rabid pro-Trump accounts.
Right. And I think the thing about it is, to me, that's quite amazing is that it's just, I mean, the one thing that I'll say, and we have Kimberly, I'd like to get her perspective, is that, we are seeing an extreme shift in the role of political parties in the United States. So political parties used to be about bringing in ideas from both parties to make effective policy. In the 1960s, when Lyndon Johnson was president, he had to work with Southern Democrats and Northern Democrats, the Dixiecrats, the ones in the South, who were against voting rights acts and everything, to bring them together, and was able to craft some very good voting rights legislation, which is what he promised after President Kennedy was assassinated. Now, at the end of the day, I think that the political parties today, it's just become, you're a MAGA, Make America Great Again, Trump Republican. And if you're not, you're ostracized. So what this has done is it's made, now here's my political theory. I think in the States, what's happened is, I look at this as very good news for North Carolina. That's my political theory. And here's why. Because you look at the state superintendent of education, okay? This is a woman that is saying she's going to ban all critical race theory. She wants to basically make our public schools private schools, right? And I think that, I'm not saying that some of her principles aren't what to be argued, but the fact is she beat a well-vetted incumbent in Kathy Truitt. Kathy Truitt lives in Cary, North Carolina, but she's by no far stretch of the imagination a liberal. She's a conservative. She worked for Governor McCrory. But at the end of the day, she got killed. I mean, it wasn't even close.
But along those same lines,
right-wing candidate, beat out John Hardister, who's one of the most effective legislators in North Carolina, beat him handily, right? Now, but what happens is, in North Carolina, as these shift to the right, I think it gives the Democrats like Stein a good opportunity to say, we're going to run more centrist campaigns from the center. So it could be 2022 all over again. The problem is that this time you're going to have Trump back in the White House. My prediction is Democratic House is going to go Democrat, Senate is going to stay Democrat, and you're going to have a Republican president. That's my political.
You guys in North Carolina, your Republican gubernatorial candidate denies the Holocaust, denies the moon landing, and says that some political leaders are actually lizards in disguise. So,
not only that, but the person that
don't forget
was just alluding to.
I want to give the smartest woman in the room always, even if there's a woman here, she would be Kimberly Calhoun. Please, what is your insight on what happened last night?
I think the way I can sum this up is the primaries are over in North Carolina and prove that people in North Carolina love drama kings and continue supporting the same two into their luxurious retirement home. They're nothing but egos that we're voting for. So I don't want anyone in North Carolina to complain when China takes over our country because you're too stupid to vote for real people and not parties with party favors. I think we need to get down to reality, and we need to start looking for more people. I think that we've allowed all of this fog and mist and hate. And, they got a Trump revival that continuously goes on in North Carolina. Good for them. Let's keep giving these rich people.
So like, and I
more
want to bring it back low. I want to bring it back low. Yeah.
I believe that the Federal Reserve will be the swing vote. Whatever their decisions are this summer will be the swing vote.
That's a great point, Kimberly, because I think a lot of it is the economy. There's still, it's not too late for Biden, but it's like a football game. It's gone from 1st and 10 to 1st and 2nd and 12, and now it's like 3rd and 20. I mean, we're not fourth down yet, but he's got to really pivot, and the economy could be something. A Trump conviction could also turn it the other way. I think a lot to be told. But bringing it back to local, what's interesting, and I want to just tell Mark Lee this, what we're hearing, the ink isn't even dry on Leo Williams' election as mayor, and there's already backdoor meetings take place of taking him out of the mayor's office because he's not progressive enough. Right?
Yeah, there's
So
been
the
definitely
same,
some
the
of
same
those
people that went after
conversations.
Woodard, that what I heard is Leo Williams is next. So they want to make him a one-term mayor, especially after his stance on the Palestinian issue, which he basically said, I voted no because I don't think the city should be doing that. So will there be another incumbent in Durham? I don't think so because I believe in Leo Williams, but I'm telling you, he has a target on his back. I don't know how many more
a
years
lot
he
of
has.
times you have targets on your back, and along those same lines, there was some interesting news in that regards because the one of the few Muslims that has been elected in city council here locally was reelected. So Nita Adams will be returning back to office. So she actually won her seat. But that person you were talking about, I think it was the Department of Public Instructions, they also wanted to condemn all people that were practicing Islam and all along those lines. So they actually made some very strong statements where they wanted to take out all folks that were of Islamic background.
Wendy Jacobs win?
Yes, Wendy Jacobs won as well. So there was a lot of liberals that won. Matter of fact, the entire progressive caucus from Durham won and everything. So Wendy Jacobs won, Michelle Burton won, Anita Adams won, and Ellams, I think it is. But definitely they all won. So that progressive core, which actually is very strong here in Durham, North Carolina, which is why I don't know necessarily that Leo would be in as much trouble as folks may be thinking about. Because one of the things that happened with Mike Woodard is that he made a lot of people upset at him with one running against Leo for that seat, and then also just kind of being a career politician. And like I said, this young lady, Sophia Chitlick, literally moved here from California and apparently was very active in California politics when she was there, and it is a mom and definitely ran on some notions of trying to bring some more sensibility to the office and everything. So definitely that'll be interesting to see what happens. And there were some other incumbents that were ousted out as well, but it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out in that regard. So it'll be fascinating. And like I think Kim said or Nick said, Nikki Haley was announcing that she was dropping out, and now people are waiting to see whether she will become the vice presidential candidate or whether she will run a third party campaign.
No, I think she'll be the
no
VP
labels
candidate.
or what her future is, or whether she'll just go on the speaking circuit and all along those lines. But
Rick Rosner has a point.
All right. So there's a Pew Research study from 2 years ago that shows that in the House and Senate, the Republicans have moved 4 times as much to the right as Democrats have moved to the left. It's the Republicans who've gotten more extreme, which is both a problem and an opportunity for Biden and the Democrats, because the more the Republicans move right, the more Biden can move to the center and grab independents, which is what Clinton did in the 90s. Clinton, he was not super popular, and then he moved to the center and became quite popular. Biden's already done that on the border, and he's got 8 more months to move more to the center.
Speaking of the border, I don't know what folks' thoughts are, but there was another state that is doing apparently some very sweeping new laws. So maybe Nick has got some thoughts about this. But Louisiana, which is also down there around some border area and everything, has signed a bill that expands their death row execution methods and laws around concealed carry. So apparently they have embraced a tough on crime approach. So Governor Jeff Landry of that state signed 11 bills into law following a very special session on crime. So apparently they're going with that law and order, tough on crime kind of attitude. But I just wondering, are we going to see more states do that? And is that something that we should see more states doing? Because apparently they're trying to get tough on crime, and we do know that the Republican Party sometimes sees itself as the law and order party.
Absolutely.
Don't talk to me about law and order when you see who's heading the ticket.
Who was making the last one for Mark's book? Was it Kimberly? Were you trying to say something?
No, I just, let's make sure that we give people an opportunity to finish what they're saying. And let's don't talk law. I agree. I think we've let our government letting crooks and criminals and organized crime into our state as it is. And we're not putting vetting things well enough. And they're just, taking advantage of the hardworking Americans and stealing more and more from them. And nobody's taking into consideration the hardworking Americans, the students who are graduating, who have so much debt on their back, they are unable to buy a house. The fact that PPP loans were issued without any accountability, and the people who received them had the complete loans waived, and we're talking billions of dollars. And then these people didn't have to account for them. So the odds are they didn't use them for what they were supposed to. Then the government, who most of them got the PPP loans, voted to forgive it. And they forgave it without taxing it like you normally forgive debts, like you forgive the student debts, you tax it as an income. They didn't even tax it back to the people. And now you got the rich controlling the economy so that the interest rates for loans are so high, people can't afford to buy loans. People are losing their houses, and the rich are coming in with the PPP loans, buying up the real estate, buying up the land, doing land grabs. And now we have established a worse economy for our children and the generations to come after that, because they're going to become nothing but servants to everything that we've allowed. And the Senate and the Congress should have never been allowed to vote to forgive those PPP loans when they themselves had PPP loans. That should have been illegal, and somebody should sue them for that and fire them for that. That's the state of our country, and the state of our state has become nothing but criminal.
Hey, just really quickly, just to go back to Louisiana, apparently he approved 11 bills, including expanding death row execution methods, concealed carry of a gun without a permit, and legislation that effectively eliminates parole for most jailed in the future. So that was some of that tough on crime stuff that he was doing, because apparently it was an overhaul of the elements of the criminal justice system in a state grappling with one of the highest rates of incarceration and violent crime in the country. So they do have that going on in that particular area. And like I mentioned on some previous show, and I don't know if they've apprehended them all, but down in another country, Haiti literally had some folks busting out, because I had some friends that said that they will not be moving anytime soon to Haiti, because apparently they broke out the entire jail and all along those lines a couple of days ago. And I don't know how many of those they have recaptured, but that was actually in Port-au-Prince and everything. So definitely the notion of tough on crime isn't just here, but it is around the country as well. So apparently, coming back to Louisiana, as they are waiting Landry's approval are that legislation are proposals to increase the penalty for carjacking, treating 17-year-olds who commit a crime as adults, and publishing court minutes for youth accused of violent crime. So they're definitely looking like they are going to try to get tough on crime in a lot of different ways and everything.
Louisiana is one of those states that's got crazy politics that goes back 159 years to Abraham Lincoln getting shot in the head so they couldn't complete Reconstruction. And you got some states that are still fighting the frickin' Civil War with
not much different than North Carolina, if you follow what I mean. If we get Mark Robinson in and Donald Trump in North Carolina, all I can say is going south, baby, going south.
No, but here's my take on that. My analysis.
Where are you moving to, Steve?
But here's my analysis I'm just going to because North Carolina is the 8th largest state and the founders of our network are from North Carolina, I'd be remiss if we didn't talk a little about North Carolina. But I think North Carolina is kind of a good example of a state that what could prevent it from going completely like in Alabama or Mississippi is the fact that typically North Carolina has elected governors that are center or right of center. So, going even back to Jim Hunt, whose daughter, by the way, is the nominee now for lieutenant governor, and the last Hunt to win lieutenant governor was in 1972, Jim Hunt, who went on to be governor of North Carolina for 16 years, 2 8-year terms. But it must be a proud father. The Hunt legacy continues. But the bottom line is that there's an argument to be made. If I were advising Josh Stein, what I would say is that to make a case that things have been going well under this governor, Roy Cooper, who helped us deal with the pandemic. We got a lot of jobs coming back in North Carolina, from VinFast to Wolfspeed to Forge Nano and Morrisville, a lot of green tech coming here, lots of jobs being created. And North Carolina has been rated as the #1 place to do business in. So the question is, I don't think it's time to change the leadership of the governor's office if the governor of North Carolina, who's got 89% approval rating, is recommending his protege to take over the team. It'd be like if a quarterback left, right, a performing team, and they said, well, we're not going to give the game now. When Joe Montana left the 49ers, who took over? Steve Young.
But
right?
Steve, along those same lines, I
So,
hear what you're going with that. But Steve, along those same lines, there is a very growing evangelistic population here in North Carolina. Has been here for a while. That is definitely who Robinson plays toward. It's not just the African American vote, but there's definitely playing toward that Christian right vote. And I would say that they are very strong and have a strong political wheel. And there are even some very popular African American churches that fall into that kind of prosperity ministry that I think may get behind him and all along those lines. So even though he said some things that I think are very insane around some of the LGBTQ issues and a number of other issues, I can see where if there is coattails, which is what Nick is predicting, if there is a victory and there are strong enough coattails, it could bring Robinson into office. And like I said, that could be a scary observation, but I'm just wondering, how is that not going to be an issue when there is such a strong amount of people? I mean, like I've said on this show several times, when I watch the commercials, they are talking about this notion of bringing Judeo-Christian values back to the legislature. And that's even kind of what Maury ran on, as well as some of the other candidates that have won and everything. So there is a strong pushback against some of the support for Dobbs and some of the anti-abortion stuff, and even some of the rights around LGBT and critical race theory and all of that. So even as a African-American male, I do know
Jacoby's had his hand up for a long time.
I'll be right back in 5 minutes. I have to take a call. I'll be right back.
Okay.
But what is y'all's take on that, Nick? What's your take on that?
We got Jacoby up next.
Strong evangelistic population there that could be a swing part of the vote.
I mean, the Christian right is always going to be there. I mean, they're going to, regardless of, whatever election it is. I mean, that's what the Republican Party panders to, is the Christian right. However, with Mark Robinson, he has a chance, and that's the scary thing. And the scary part is the fact of the extremist policies that he's trying to push forward, the atrocious things that he said towards the LGBTQIA community, plus Black people. So all minorities, honestly, it's just scary. And then if you take into account, he's going to try and ride the coattails of Trump. And Trump right now is pushing for that Black vote by using AI. And it's pretty
fake AI in that.
But yes, he's utilizing AI to try and fool Black people into voting for him. And then and that's what Mark Robinson is going to eventually do. He's riding on that coattail. So it's just, it's sad. And I know Steve was staying on the positive side and hoping that Josh Stein.
That's what he's trying to do.
Yeah. But
Steve's trying to uphold the great state of North Carolina.
Exactly. It's just a tad scary that right now Mark Robinson, because
scary.
if you look at who voted, there were 600,000 Republicans who voted for Mark Robinson.
Mark Robinson.
There were
Yep.
450,000 that voted for Josh Stein. So
Yep.
the get out the vote push has to be huge.
Hey, Jatovi,
I got
along
one
those same
question
lines.
to ask. I got one question to ask Mark. Have they allowed March Madness to be in the ACC to be back into North Carolina since the McCrappy law?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, they have.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, so we
North
recovered
Carolina.
Governor McCrappy's laws, and we are back in business. Okay, so maybe we have improved some, or maybe
Yeah,
we just
that is
forgot how
allowed, but
crappy all of that was.
yeah. But Jatovi, along those same lines and everything, I don't know your thoughts because he kind of alluded to it earlier, and I think the lady's name is Maury, the Republican that's running for that seat. But she said some very anti-Islamic things, and I got that it's a very touchy issue. As a matter of fact, when I went and voted yesterday, I ran by a pro-Palestinian sign. I actually took a picture of it and may put it on Facebook later and everything. But I'm just wondering our observations around people that are targeting another group, because definitely not just here, but I think in Michigan and other places, they are definitely targeting, even though it's a small group, a group of folks that they feel are not of the values that they want. Because I think she said that she would be banning some of the folks that were of the Islam background and everything. And definitely she said that she would not be, she said she's some things around teaching and what she would allow to be taught and everything. But I just wanted your take on this lady who I think is going to be in charge of public education if she gets the seat. Anybody?
You mean Trump's lady?
Yeah, Trump's lady that's running in North Carolina.
Yeah. Anybody who's dealing with Trump, I cannot trust. I can't support. I mean, I just can't, because if you're going to support a sexual abuser, a fraud, a man who's got 91 charges coming up against him, who's also hosted some anti-Semitic individuals, who's also said some very racist things. But yeah, if you're going to support a person like that, I can't be on that bandwagon. I'm sorry, you're probably a bad person too.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I want to
Speaking of
quickly
that,
talk about California.
I was
where
going to get to
it's
California
gonna-
because I wanted to find out your thoughts around Steve Harvey, who is running against Adam Schiff, and a lot of people will think that celebrity focus is what is going to get Steve Harvey the
No, here's
election,
the,
since
it's
apparently
good
he is
news
a
for-
former Dodger
here's
and
the
an
deal.
All-Star Dodger.
So it's Adam Schiff, Democrat, against Steve Garvey, Trump, Republican. California's 2/3 Democratic. So it's going to be an easy race for Schiff, and he won't have to spend millions of bucks as he would if he were running off against Katie Porter, a Democrat. Those millions, or maybe probably tens of millions of dollars, can go into other campaigns across the country, because it'll be tough for Democrats to take back the Senate, somewhat easier for them to take back the House, because the current House is completely dysfunctional. But Schiff and Garvey frees up money for the Democrats and the rest of the country.
Hey, Rick, along those same lines, there is a state in California, or a city in California, that has been very much known for being very liberal. It's been liberal for years and everything, and they are now struggling with post-pandemic recovery and everything. But they are saying that they have moved right, that being the city of San Francisco, because apparently they responded in their election on Tuesday to ongoing drug, homelessness, and crime crisis by approving policies that bolster police and require drug screenings for welfare recipients. So even though there's a moderate Democrat who faces a tough fight, that being London Breed, apparently she hitched her political future into a slate of 3 ballot measures that aim to move a city struggling with its slow post-pandemic recovery in a more conservative direction. So apparently they voted to approve all
if you're a Democrat,
measures.
if you're a Democrat, most likely you can't go wrong by moving to the center, because the Republicans have left a bunch of people behind by moving so far to the right. They leave the center open, and it's what Clinton did. It's what Biden is starting to do, and probably should continue to do, is move to the center, grab the center. The far left will get all mad and be very noisy, and you might lose votes there, but there are more votes to be grabbed in the center than at the extremes.
Hey, well, speaking of that, centrist leading policies, apparently Breed responded with a slate of policy changes she said would remake the city. Besides the drug screening requirement, she's proposed expanding police officers' authority to chase suspects and use drones and video surveillance. And I know that even here in North Carolina, there's always been conversations around pro-development. So she just joined pro-development YIMBY, YIBMBY advocates to back waiving a local tax for developers who convert office buildings into housing. And I know that's something I've been saying we need to do more of here, including on our campuses, because I know there are a number of them that are probably empty and could be used for a housing and everything. But I just wanted your take on this notion, because that would be like a centrist policy as well, of trying to take something that is basically sitting there empty and convert it into housing. And I think that's something that could be done in North Carolina, just as it's being apparently proposed in California. But I just wondered your take on that notion, and like you just said, maybe move into the center as opposed to the left or the right.
California has the most homeless people in the nation, probably 100,000, because it's a nice place to be homeless compared to like Cleveland. And the problem is fairly intractable, but you have to try stuff. And so people, and some of the stuff is going to be, more harsh than the stuff that's been tried before. And yeah, the death of retail and telecommuting leaves a ton of office space vacant. And yeah, see if you can, LA has had trouble making housing for homeless that's inexpensive. It's crazy how much they spend on these little 8-foot by 8-foot sheds for homeless people. But if you can figure out a cost-effective way to do it, do it.
Rick, I want to tell you something interesting. It's even better to be homeless in Aruba than California. But guess what? There are no homeless people in Aruba. So they have fantastic climate all year round, plus 28. The water is plus 26. Not 25, not 27. It's just like that all year. It's a heaven on earth, and there are no homeless. Guess what?
No, it sounds amazing. You just came back from there and everything. But just really quickly, the question I had to ask, and I don't know, maybe I see we've got Irene, and she's been doing our wonderful new show on timeshares.
Mark, I want to take a moment and introduce Irene real quick at the half hour that we're here. Everyone, I want to welcome Irene Parker. She is a big advocate for many things, but right now she is hosting a show called Timeshares, Solutions or Surrender. She has helped thousands of people with timeshare situations, because not every one of them is a scam, but there are a lot of scams out there. But the show is about bringing about awareness, giving information, and helping people become their do-it-yourself advocate if they feel like that they're scammed. But the big part about the show is to help bring a large group of people some information and maybe prevent some of the mistakes that are made, because not every timeshare was purchased under a scam, but some of them do turn into scams and some of them were. But Irene is really good at vetting out these things. She's got a lot of experience in this area. She's helped thousands of people. And I want everyone to please welcome Irene to the group, to the Pod TV family. And Irene, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Well, I got myself into this in 2016 when I resolved my own dispute. And I'm sure the people on this program are familiar with CASA, Court-Appointed Special Advocate for Children in Foster Care. There's a big one in California. And I used that model to develop a self-advocacy approach to steer people to try to resolve their own dispute without paying a third party. The timeshare exit scam is so popular right now that the Jalisco, Mexico cartel has jumped in, and the FTC has just sanctioned them. They distribute fentanyl and timeshare exit scams in the United States. So there's everybody's talking about Trump, and I can certainly weigh in there, because I tell my Trump supporting friends that you can like Trump for other reasons, but consumer protection is not one of them. after I have a picture in 2016 of Trump as a candidate on the platform, and standing to his stage right is David Siegel, the owner of Westgate Resorts. CFPB had been investigating Westgate for 2 years, and that investigation was dropped 30 days after the election, and the CFPB was all but dismantled. I knew one of the former SEC attorneys that worked closely with the CFPB. He described it as a brain drain. So that's one fear I have, is that that's going to dismantle that. But I like to give call some attention on the most important issue I feel is active duty service members losing their finding their security clearance in jeopardy because of a timeshare loan default. And in addition, there are veterans that have security clearances. One person who bought Westgate served 24 years overseas. He's waiting for a lung transplant, and he was not allowed a medical release, a hardship release, when there's little to no resale values. So on April 18th, there is a hearing at the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals in Jacksonville, Atlanta, in which the oral arguments, to me, this is the Super Bowl of timeshare lawsuits, and there are many lawsuits flying around, but this one is to determine whether a timeshare stay is a residential stay or a transient stay, because the Military Lending Act prohibits arbitration, which attorneys I talked to, at least in timeshare, describe as a kangaroo court. So thank you for letting me pop in, and I'm wearing my office attire.
I want to add something to what's going on here. Timeshares do not have to adhere to the same laws and rules as real estate. If you go take the real estate classes, everything says, real estate has to abide by this and lending has to abide by this, with exception to timeshares. And the reason why this is bad is because timeshares are allowed to treat you as if it is real estate and a real mortgage, but they don't have to abide by the same laws and policies, which get people hooked into a lifetime forever after, and their inheritance. The people who inherit this also inherit the problem as well. So that your children or their children will inherit your debts with the timeshares, the way the laws are being allowed with this industry. And that might have been partly because of Trump being in office when he was, that timeshare laws have been so well enforced and taking advantage of the military, as well as taking advantage of, senior citizens who didn't know any better, people on vacation who were drunk and didn't know any better. And they sign these contracts and get stuck forever and ever.
They get caught up in that and everything. Hey, Irene and Kim, just really quickly and everything along those.
It's on every Monday at 1. And don't forget to text in your questions if you have any. Thank you.
I'm going to have to check that out.
Irene and Kim, along those same lines, and I'd love to hear Irene's thoughts around that, because that's actually where I was going in the conversation and all along those lines, because I think that one of the issues that is important, even in the election, is this notion of the importance of developers and the importance of what they are doing. Because I have noticed, even here in Durham, North Carolina, and I've seen it in other states as well, in other cities, a whole lot of buildings that are being built. And even though we have a homeless problem, and there's one even where Rick is at in California that he just alluded to, there are a number of empty buildings that are not being used, and therefore they're not even at occupancy. Jacoby, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there are a number of new ones that have been built here, and they're probably at like less than 50% occupancy, if that, and everything. So I just wondered, what are our thoughts around that, and what can we do? Because I have a number of friends that are been in that kind of homeless situation, and that is something that they are fighting, trying to find a place to live. And it seems like we've got a lot of places and spaces that could be used that are not being used, and every time you turn around, there's new construction. We got like at least 5 or 6 that are being going up now in downtown Durham and all along those lines. But I just wondered anybody's take on that, and whether that's going to be an important issue in the election, because I think that it is a waste of space if we're not using it effectively.
So you mentioned NIMBY earlier. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard,
Right.
where people I live in a nice suburb of LA, Studio City, and yeah, there's a lot of resistance in nice places for building denser housing or converting. We have a famous hotel called the Sportsman's Lodge that couldn't do business during COVID, shut down, and was turned into homeless housing for about a year. And, people freaked out a little bit because, not all homeless people have stable lifestyles. There was some drugs, there was some prostitution, there was some mental illness. Most people who are homeless aren't mentally ill. Most don't abuse substances, but enough do that it freaks people out.
Yeah, definitely. Jacoby, any thoughts on what I just said? Because I definitely think that it's something, and I know you've been talking to some developers as well, that they can do a better job of. And that's part of what I think it might have been Steve mentioned, the threat to Leo. And part of it is that he is pro-development. It's not just the Palestinian stance, but it's also some of his pro-development stances as well that might get him in trouble with some of the progressives. But I just wanted your take on that.
In terms of the use of the empty development sites?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, they have to be somehow filled. And I mean, it's up to the developer. It would be nice to, I think that there was somewhere that was utilizing malls, rundown malls to help house the homeless. But yeah, the homeless population is something that, yeah, gonna need help around. And need more than just housing. There has to be a full program around it to deal with job development. Just as Rick pointed out, yeah, some have issues some extra issues to deal with, from drugs to criminal behavior or to whatever. But mainly, yeah, homeless people just want to work just like everybody else. They want to be able to provide for their family. We can figure out a program that helps out with that and figure out another way. We got to think out of the box rather than thinking the same way.
Yeah.
Not everyone that's homeless is a drug addict or an alcoholic or a substance abuser. There are many people who've become homeless due to the economic situation that our country has put upon them, while they were giving away free money to the rich and shameless and not making them accountable for it. There were other people struggling to get ahead. And I just, they didn't forgive the debts on these people's backs, and they had to continue struggling. We've got other problems too that are arising, not just in our country, but in our state, that we need to be more aware of. And we need to start cracking down on these situations before they get out of hand. One of them is something I just recently experienced last Thursday night. I call them the parking booty pirates. And you can go visit a friend, and they have free parking spaces marked visitor. And if you don't look around hard enough, you're not going to see the signs that say you have to register to park, because they're not in every parking space. So you have to go find them. They have no parking for disabled or handicapped, which I am. And if you register, which it takes a long time to register, you have to find it, scan it, spend a long time registering your name, your phone number, your address, birthday, everything about who you are, then about your car, make, model, color, year, tags, and then who you're visiting. So somewhere in there, you might make a typo, and that should be excusable, but it is not. Then you have to say how long you're staying. And I went to visit a friend, realized, I have to register. So I did, and I put 2 hours in there. And the end result of this 2-hour visit, I left at 1 hour and 45 minutes, went to my car, and I'll show you what it looked like. Let's see if I can add this back to the stage. I went to my car. As you can see, there was no signage facing me, but there was signage opposing, the other way. I did the registration. I got this little nice note back, said, thank you for parking here. You know, don't forget to leave. When I walked out 1 hour and 45 minutes later, there was a boot on my tire and a laminated ticket like this. It looked like, I mean, a first grader wouldn't have wrote this up, but it was scratched through and scribbled. I called the first number, nobody answered. I called the second number, nobody answered. It was dark. I was scared in a big parking lot by myself. As you can see, it looked like a thug wrote this, like they were mugging me. So I called the other number and nobody answered. And then I finally went to my friend's house that I visited because my phone died. We got on the phone with them and they said, if you can produce the email that registered you, you know, saying you had time left, I'll come remove the boot. But as far as we're concerned, your time expired. We finally got the email and sent it to them. And the email, it said I had 15 minutes left. He said that my email shows that I just registered it at that time. And so my friend kind of argued with them. We ended up not being able to get the boot removed. He threatened to send a tow truck. Of course, I got angry. I was hungry, starving. All I wanted to do was be home. I have a disability to begin with, a little bit of dyslexia, especially when I get very tired. The end result was he said he wasn't going to remove the boot because I keyed one of the digits wrong on my tag. And they couldn't identify me, which is, you know, one car in the parking lot that night. So they couldn't identify that white Prius Toyota 2015 was mine. And I gave him, you know, my name, my address, everything else was pretty well right. He said that it would be $200 or $180 in cash. Of course, who carries cash these days? You might get mugged. So I, you know, told him no. And he said he was going to send a tow truck. Because, you know, I told him, you said that you would remove it if I showed you proof that I had time left, and he refused to do it because of the tag. So I ended up, and my friend ended up sitting in my car while a tow truck backed up to it. They then charged me an additional $500 on top of this. Then I had to pay the tow truck different, which they only take payment by Venmo or Cash App, which I didn't have either of those on my phone. The police finally came and they said what they were doing was legal, but morally illegal, which now I use that term a lot. But the end result was the police negotiated down that I paid the boot man, the pirate, parking booty pirate, $200, which I had to give him a credit card and my driver's license, which that was scary because he looked like a thug. He looked like he just came out of prison, and I normally don't judge people, but being in a parking lot by myself, it looks like you're being mugged. So then the tow truck, my friend had to give him their Cash App because he wouldn't take credit card or cash. He would only take Cash App, which not everybody has. But here's the problem I have with this. You know, yeah, I keyed in the tag number wrong, and that's what the police said. I ended up paying $350 thanks to the police officer because he negotiated them down. But he said that you know, our government's allowing these people to do business in this state. The police officers don't get paid that well when they give tickets. I felt that I would have had a better chance if I were being mugged in the parking lot because they wouldn't have walked away with my money. I would have been able to get in my car and drive home. I was there for 3 hours starving to death. Thought I was going to pass out from being hungry because I just wanted to go, but they wouldn't remove the boot until things were resolved. It was not a nice situation. While I was sitting in the car, the thug kept beating on my window, wanted me to either get out and pay him or whatever. But again, I felt like I was being mugged. But what's pathetic is our state is allowing these people to come into our state and do things to us like this, or to do business in a state like this. This is not a friendly state anymore. It was a friendly visit. Friendly visit.
But Kim, that's across the board. I've actually had a similar incident that happened
Well,
last year and along those lines
does the
because
same thing downtown Raleigh.
no, but I'm saying it's in
Parking.
Raleigh, it's in Durham, it's in a number of places because a lot of apartment complexes. As a matter of fact, if I go outside my door, I'll
Yeah,
probably
but
run
they all are. We're allowing it. We're allowing it. Our Department of Justice Department is allowing thugs to take over like this.
What
And
is
they
and a lot
claim
of
that
that
they're
is out of
protecting the parking lot. They're not protecting the parking lot.
what is, when
a
you
lot of
talk
that is
to,
out of
when you
state.
talk to
A lot of that is out of
politicians,
state
what do they
companies 'cause-
say? What do politicians say when you talk to them about this?
Politicians don't address this issue.
The politicians
you
don't
know-
care because they're
All right,
getting
so-
paid by the parking companies, because the parking companies also took over downtown Raleigh, because I've heard a lot of
You
complaints.
know, I sat on my homeowners association board, Rick, and we had the same issue, but we had some people there that their attitude was, it's the law, you broke the law, we're going to enforce the law, we're going to hire these towing trucks and we're going to pull you away. In other words, they don't really give a rat's rear about the individual person's case. If you ever saw, there was a TV show, there was one on South Beach, one on Lizard Lick, North Carolina, about how these legalized thugs get around and do this stuff. Your only recourse is actually to sue them and take them to court. Now, why would you do that? Because first of all, you may win. You never know. You ask for a jury trial, you may win on a jury trial, because juries are very sympathetic to individuals. But here's the other reason you do it. So, because these people are all about time and money. They don't care about the car. They don't care about enforcing the law. They don't care about the law. They're looking at two metrics: time, how much time is it going to take, how much money can I make? That's it. Well, when you drag somebody through court, guess what? They lose time and they lose money. And so it's pretty
Nick,
important
if I can
that
loop
you,
the two
you
issues
you
back
actually
together and
drag them to
everything,
court.
isn't
I
part
was
of the
going to tell
problem
Irene,
that-
since you're going before the 11th Circuit, I'm not licensed to practice law in North Carolina, so I can't help you because Florida has no reciprocity. I am licensed in the 11th Circuit. I've been licensed there for like 30, maybe 40 years. So, but the good thing, Irene, is that you are, or somebody, a consumer advocate, is taken to court and dragging them through the legal system, because if they don't do that, they're going to operate with impunity. So
Well, Nick,
unfortunately, that's your option. You have
The
to fight
problem
back.
I
If you
had,
don't, forget it.
yeah, the problem I had was they kept changing the rules as I sat there, and they came back and they told the officer, tell her it's going to be $100 an hour while she sits there.
Right,
It was
exactly.
in the terms that it would go up
Everything you
$100 an
said
hour.
is great
Did
in front
you-
of a jury.
They just
Request
keep
a jury
changing the
trial,
rules.
take them to
Right.
court. And,
Did you,
and
did
go
you
from
put this
there.
on a credit card, Kim?
I know they wouldn't let you put it
I'm
on.
not going to cancel. I should cancel it.
Why
I'm
why
not-
don't you cancel it? Why
Why
don't
don't
you
you?
put a dispute?
I should.
I mean, if you look at it from another respect, it was basically a mugging and theft and larceny on your car. So the thing is, I would call the credit card company and cancel them, of course.
Well, and it's
You
the
know,
apartment
you have to
complexes
fight this
hiring
stuff, because
the
if you
thugs.
don't, they'll get away with it.
Right. But it's
The
also
same
the
with these
apartment
timeshare people.
Well, that's
Right.
what it is. A
The
lot of times
apartment
it is.
You
a
should
apartment
drag them
complex
to
is
every
COVID.
court in America. You know,
Right.
and I did that when I ran it to a crook. It was in one of the companies when I was in. That's the reason I got licensed before the United States Supreme Court. I said, you guys don't understand. I'll spend $500,000, which I did, on this case, and take you to every court in town. You will not win this case, and they didn't. You know, and you have to have that attitude. Otherwise, they're just going to keep getting away with it over and over
Toby,
again.
you had-
And you got to do it with the timeshare scammers. You got to do it with these scammers, and you have to enforce your rights.
They make it
Even
impossible
if you
to
lose,
be
you
able to pay. They make it impossible because, like, the one guy I had to pay with an app of some kind I didn't have on my phone, and the other guy required cash or a credit card. What if I didn't have a credit card at the time? And then you had to give him your driver's license before, and which scared me because now he's got my address, which they had anyway. Also, they're selling your data. All the data that they got from me, I have done nothing but receive phone calls since then all day long from people trying to sell me something. So they're selling your identity.
And what you also have to do is you also have to sue the city of Raleigh, because all these wimps that sit on these boards, like our board, they were scared to death of being sued. I was kind of like, dude, I used to swim in lawsuits. I used to get, we used to call people up. Hey, they threaten to sue. I said, hey, bring it over, baby. But it's funny. These
And
non-lawyers.
city councils allow these.
I'm a tad confused here. So it sounds like you had parked in a
Got
spot.
scammed.
I'm just asking the question. So it sounds like you parked in a spot that you had not registered for.
No, I
She
did
did
register.
You did register for it, and
I did
they came and-
register.
Judge Jadovi has now decided.
No, I'm just trying to figure out the
Oh,
situation.
go ahead.
This-
And I
This is one of
registered
those
2
things-
hours.
Yeah, this is one of those things that it happens on a regular basis, and that's why I'm confused by the lawsuit aspect of it, because you're not going to win that lawsuit, especially I just don't. I mean.
No, I registered, Jatovi. I registered everything about me.
Okay.
And I was 15 minutes early getting back to my car, and they had already booted it. And when
Okay.
I finally got a hold of someone, which it took me 15 minutes to get a hold of someone because they didn't answer their hand scribbled numbers, which one of them I couldn't read. They said that my time had expired, but they had booted me 15 minutes earlier than my time expiring. So then after arguing with him about that, and he said, well, if you just send me your receipt to show me that it hadn't, I'll take the boot off. We got my receipt and we sent it to him. And then he said, well, no, we're still not going to do it because you keyed in a digit on your tag wrong.
So here's how you beat the system. Here's how you beat the system. You write a screenplay called Taken 4, Booted, it starts with Liam Neeson getting his car booted and by thugs, and then the rest of the movie is, it just accelerates into a huge battle.
No, but Kim, isn't part of the problem that's what I was alluding to?
Where
I don't think that's a North Carolina. So I don't think that's a North Carolina thing. That's not just a North Carolina thing. I mean, New York has boots. Every state has boots. They all hire out to different companies. That's not just an isolated thing to North Carolina.
But we shouldn't be allowing it.
10 years ago, LA had a problem with predatory toll companies.
No, it's a national problem. And part of the problem, and that's what I was going to allude to, and everything, is that a lot of these people, and Nick, I don't know how you would deal with this, are not in-state companies. A lot of the apartment complexes aren't based here. They're based in places like California. They're based in Florida. So how are you going to deal with that when it is the local people that are actually the ones that are trying to enforce it? Like I said, I had a friend that literally came to visit me, and when I came outside, their car was gone. So they had to go do like you did. They literally had to go to the tow company and pay for the car. So I actually helped them pay for that deal, and that was during the pandemic.
You go to the city council and you tell them not to let these people come in because their rates are grossly inflated.
Well, I don't know if the city council has any power over a private entity.
Yes, they do, because these parking places had to get authority to come in. These parking companies, they just got authority to go into Asheville. So I'm going to write all the city councils in North Carolina to ban them. So
the reason I was saying that is that if it's private property, being an apartment complex, if that private property owns those parking spots, then didn't that private entity hire those towing groups?
They did.
They did.
So then I don't understand where city council comes into play.
Because city council is approving these businesses.
I still don't get how.
They're also allowing them to play these bully tactics for the government. The government's been hiring them too.
But Jatovi, you might be right. If this was the apartment complex, you want to sue the group that has the contract. You might be right. Then the city has no jurisdiction over it. It's the apartment complex. But if you don't create a legal, we used to tell our clients all the time, if you don't enforce your legal rights, nobody's going to enforce it for you. So unfortunately, you have to jump up and enforce that.
Here's another fun thing you can do. Buy hoopty cars for $100 and flood the zone.
What?
Leave crap cars that barely run in their lots. Take off the license plate so they can't trace it back to you, and just saddle them with dozens and dozens of crap cars that they have to tow away.
Actually, tow a bunch of crappy cars into the parking lot. Take all the tags off. I love it.
So Irene actually pointed out something perfect, and that's where I think my confusion comes into play. Irene, I'll let you take it because you typed it in the chat.
Right. The whole argument at the 11th Circuit is about arbitration because Diamond Resorts, when Apollo Global Management acquired Diamond, the hedge fund, they added an arbitration clause. And so deceptive practices, according to my many attorney friends, don't work for timeshare because damages are not uniform. And even if you do sue, you might get a few things in public record, but the judges have 100% compelled arbitration, except in the case of Kirchner versus Wyndham, where Wyndham inexplicably did not pay their AAA fees, and 3 lower courts in 3 states, including North Carolina, refused to appoint a special arbitrator when the AAA declined to arbitrate. So 2 settled, but then when there were oral arguments at the Atlanta 11th Circuit, and Wyndham lost. So that is one class action, but one of my attorney friends called it a one-off. And I'll just finish with one senior couple in their 70s disputed a loan for $5,000, and the judgment against them was $95,000. They were ordered to pay $79,000 in the resort's attorney's fees. And I reached out to an executive I know, and that did get reversed. But there's other extreme adverse rulings as well.
Yeah, I had my experience with
I mean,
AAA
now they'll
also up in
walk all
Washington
over
State.
us.
All I can tell you about AAA, which is the American Arbitration, it's a corrupt organization. There's absolutely no question about it. And the reason I can say it, yes, I have evidence they were corrupt. I complained about it because the arbitrator that we hired did not disclose that he was our defendant's attorney. If you can imagine that. Okay, so the thing is, there can be nothing more corrupt in law than that you hire somebody and they don't disclose what they're required to do. And hey, it's okay. Frankly, it's not okay. And yes, my case did go to the Supreme Court. We lost the case 9-0. But as I told them, I said, how many other cases do you want to bring before the Supreme Court? And they dropped it because it took me 10 years. But I said, look, if it takes me 10, 20 years, if I spend $500,000 or $1 million, I don't give a rat's for it. You'll never win.
Hey, just really quick, because we got to get ready to wrap up and everything. But Jason Rhodes says that tough on crime is not tough on crime if laws are strict but not enforced. If criminals are arrested with illegal weapons, because that's something we were talking about earlier, but not given serious sentences or even not at all are the serious gun laws a joke. So we can talk about gun laws on tomorrow and everything. And by the way, it was good to see you again, Irene. And I know coming up at 1 o'clock, and he did mention his Aruba vacation and a number of other things. But we'll have Sasha talking about what's going on in modern investments. So any major thing you're going to talk about other than the fact that NVIDIA is making you a lot of money that was able to get you to Aruba?
By the way, it wasn't Aruba vacation. It was NVIDIA vacation. Because NVIDIA has paid for this vacation, the next 10 vacations, and perhaps 25. So, here we go. But it's nice.
So we'll be doing that at 1 o'clock. And by the way, Jatovi did mention it because I know Irene had mentioned it earlier that John Oliver did a great piece on timeshares, and it looks like it got a lot of views. But Irene's been getting a lot of views here on Pod TV. So definitely, folks, if you're not catching that show on Monday, do catch it because Irene does an amazing job, and she's had a veteran on as well as a couple that is also in gardening. I'm trying to still get them to do that gardening show and everything else, but she does some amazing things. So we are glad to have her as part of the team. So we've got another lady. It's not just Kim, and hopefully we'll be getting some other ones on a regular basis as well. So definitely good to have you on board and doing your show. But we'll be having.
And I just want to say thank you so much for letting me drop in.
No problem. So right now we're going to get on out of here. And like I said, we'll have Modern Investment coming your way at 1 o'clock. I think he's got Milan. He may be having Jim E joining them and others as well. But definitely it'll be another great discussion. So we're looking forward to that at 1 o'clock.
There's a great possibility that by 1 o'clock, NVIDIA shares will be over $900 a share. It's about $884 now, but the way it trades, it goes only one way, and it's up.
Cool. He might be going not just to Aruba, but going to France or some other places. He might have all kinds of vacations due to his NVIDIA vacation plan.
Aruba is still number one priority. I've been in France many times. I mean, to see one more time Eiffel Tower and the great places like Nizza or Cannes. I'd rather visit actually Grasse. That's a great place that you love. But to get there, you have to fly to France. You have to get to or take a cruise ship to stop at Cannes, and from Cannes you can take actually a bus to Grasse, which will cost you only €1. Believe it or not, it's a 45 minutes drive, and it costs you only €1. That's a great bargain. That's where I would go.
Sounds like a great bargain. Like I said, we get out of here and we'll be talking about Nikki Haley dropping out, and who knows, maybe she'll be vice president on tomorrow's World Edition, as well as what other things folks want to talk about as well. But definitely we'll have World Edition and World Politics tomorrow. But Biden Investment will be coming your way at 1 o'clock, and Follow the Brand, which is a branding show with Grant McCall, will be coming at 7 o'clock. So we've got some amazing shows, including my online dinner party at 4 o'clock. But we're going to get on out of here, and we'll see you at 1 o'clock, Sasha, and definitely looking forward to some great conversations on Pod TV.